First of all, welcome. Thank you all, as I said, for joining us. My name is Trevor Boehm, founder of the Uncivilized Movement and the Uncivilized Nation. And I'm going to share a little bit of a story of these two gentlemen in a second. But first, Mark and Dewey want to share this with you, that this is the frame I think that I had coming into this call. And about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I was driving out of Breckenridge and heard this poem come on the radio. And it was so moving to me that I actually pulled over because I started crying. And I thought of the both of you. And so it's 60 seconds long. I want to read it. Any of you who know the names Gary Rossington or Ronnie Van Zant, some of you elder gents may know who these two guys are. And here's the poem. Mama told me when I was young, come sit beside me, my only son, and listen closely to what I say. And if you do this, it'll help you some sunny day. Oh, take your time. Don't live too fast. Troubles will come and they will pass. You'll find a woman and you'll find love. And don't forget, son, there is someone up above. And be a simple kind of man. Oh, be something you love and understand. Baby, be a simple kind of man. Oh, won't you do this for me, son, if you can? Forget your lust for the rich man's gold. All that you need is in your soul. And if you do this, if you try, all that I want for you, my son, is to be satisfied and be a simple kind of man. Boy, don't you worry, you'll find yourself. Follow your heart and nothing else. And if you do this, if you try, all that I want for you, my son, is to be satisfied. Mm-hmm. And guys, it was so moving to me because I think most of us did not get that kind of advice. We didn't get that kind of wisdom. I'm grateful for the wisdom I got, but what I was told is you're not going to make anything of yourself if you don't get a master's degree, so go get that. I think I was like 7 at the time. It wasn't follow your heart, follow your soul, find love, be true to yourself, be true to what's above. And one of the reasons I love you both so dearly is because when you speak to me and you speak to the men in the nation and you speak to the people on this call, I think you come from the place that, yes, that's a Leonard Skinner song, but the essence of it is I care about you. And I want to take my life, my wisdom, my learned experience and share it with you so that you have a better life. That to me is what we're disconnected from here in the West by being disconnected from our elders. So thank you both for joining us. For those of you who don't know either of these two men, on my right is Mark Sylvester. He's done a few things in software. He's done a few things in the kitchen. He's done a few things with some companies. He's been a massive, massive influence on myself and on the nation and on Uncivilized. Like when I say massive, it's hard to describe with words. There is nothing that I do that he hasn't had an influence on. So that's Mark. And I'll let these guys say a little bit more about themselves in a minute. And a lot of you know Dewey. He's the fucking GOAT, as we like to call him. He's been a therapist probably longer than I've been alive and has trained more therapists than I'm just gonna make some stuff up. It's not true, Dewey, than anybody else on the planet. And is a savant, right? At the human experience, at trauma, at equine therapy. And that's their resumes. But what I think I can say that before having them take over the call is what's far more impressive than your CVs and what you've accomplished is who you are as men and how you've taken the experiences of your lives and alchemized them through love, through care, through tenderness, through Dewey, through relationship, Mark, through your brilliance. And so generously that it's, again, hard to put into words, shared them with the world and with us. And so, folks, for the last 2 years, is it?
2.5
These guys
ish.
have
Yeah.
2 years, have done a podcast episode every week for just the men in the uncivilized nation, the Elder Council. And this is their 100th episode. We haven't paid them a dime for it. They came to us and said, this is how we would like to honor and support your community, and have just given and given and given. And this is kind of their breakout party. This is the 100th episode. They are now leaving our bubble and going out into the world and taking their wisdom and their expertise and opening it up to all of us. And they're going to be touring. They're going to be, I think there's a book in the works, or a book that's written. You're now getting to witness the first episode of a show that's about to go international. So, gents, we thank you. We love you. We appreciate you. I use the word with reverence. We honor you and would love to have you take it from here. Thank you for joining us.
Mr. T, thank you so much. It's
My pleasure.
it's been a ride. It's been a fun ride. Dewey? Every Saturday morning getting up early.
98 of the shows have been fun. One or two have been, I've been unbelievably exhausted at times, and even that's still fun.
But I always figure out how to put a smile on your face.
You do. You do. Every minute that I'm around you. You bet.
Yeah, it's life's too short not to be smiling through most of it. Ms. T, again, thank you so much. And at 100 episodes, just quickly for those who don't know, about 2.5 years ago, we were, in the thick of COVID, and you had heard about this guy who lived up in the mountains near you, and you went up and you did took your gear with you and did a podcast episode with him. And as you were coming down the mountain, you called me and said, I just met your older brother. And so Dewey and I set up a call that Saturday. And what was interesting is we had the kind of the getting to know you, who are you bit, that whenever you meet someone new, and that was, chit chat is not our strong point. We got to about here, and then that plane was at about 50,000 feet pretty quickly, and we ran out of time. Dewey had a client, and I said, can we talk next week? And so we talked the next Saturday at the same time. And this time we entered at 50 and went to 100. And we were at 100 and we ran out of time again. I hadn't learned enough about his business and practice and clients. And so we said, 3 weeks, please. So he still hadn't finished. And on the third week, we're in it at about 5 minutes. And I said, would it be okay with you if I hit the record button? Because this is just really good. And that was when the show started. And we've put all this up at theeldercouncil.com, so you can go see all of this and read all of this as of this morning. But that first episode, I was in the habit at the time, I was working with a venture firm where I did a lot of explaining of really big concept, big ideas. And you guys know me, I draw to make sense of complexity. And so I drew our first conversations, like I'm drawing while Dewey's talking. And I think that lasted a couple episodes, and I found myself getting distracted by the drawing. So I turned that off. But if you want to see how I process things, you can watch those first couple episodes. And then it was a habit for us, right? That having these kinds of really deep and interesting conversations is, well, we found that we both looked forward to it all week long. And what we talked about, because I'm an improver, was typically would be one word that would start us off, right, Do? And then
yeah,
and typically if you listen to a few of the shows, at about 30 minutes in, we go, oh, that's what we're talking about. And then it becomes a thing. So with that all being said, Mr. Freeman, to you, sir.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. Mark. Thank you, Traver. Mark, one of the pieces with all of this that I have, and it was actually our first couple conversations, it was like, oh, you do this, you think this, so do I. You're with a woman named Kimberly, so am I. You're doing all of these things. So it was like, are we talking about your Kimberly or my Kimberly right now? Those kinds of things. So there was a tremendous amount of connection. And then what began deepening our connection was the different doors that we came in. The, you know, with Mark coming in with such an incredibly deep business background and also incredibly creative background in technology, where, you know, I feel pretty proud of myself when I can get my computer to turn on. And so it was like, here's this man who's gone through an incredible life, very different from mine, and that has deepened our connection. And the level of respect and the level of laughter, the level of support that we have shared has put together has actually cemented our relationship to the point of deep intimacy, and the point of being able to, even in the middle of the night, if one of us needs to have somebody to speak to, or we do that. And that's not, just so you know, that's not just a saying. That has happened around some very major events in each of our lives. So and I'll just, that'll be the last thing I say. There are many people that say to me, yeah, you can call me at 2 a.m. When I wake up at 2 a.m., I don't think, I go, nah. When I wake up at 2 a.m. and I need somebody to call, I have and can call. That's been a real piece. So.
I heard something as we were doing the show that really stuck with me and has stuck with me, and I'm reminded of it now, is that there's just three simple things that we need: something to do, someone to love, and something to look forward to. And I'm reminded of the Leonard Skinner, just to be a simple man. Like, what if it were simple? You know, my Kimberly, because I tend to overbuild for the neighborhood always. I'm a systems thinker, so I think big to small and small to big. In one conversation, I have to apologize for that a lot. So she'll just look at me and go, what if it were simple? And I think that's something that is really something to keep in mind all the time. As an improver, that's also something I get to practice 4 times a week. How do I keep this simple? Because it's a lot easier to understand. With that all being said, Zach, if you could unpin Traver, let's open this up. We do, on occasion, we do these live shows. Typically, for those of you who've not heard us, welcome. You can go to the eldercouncil.com, and we've got I took our first 99 episodes and we created a book that you can get, you can read online, you can download it to your Kindle. It's kind of takes through, I think, the top 10 episodes that we've done and why we think they're important. You can hear our story. In fact, Dewey and I did not meet in person for well over a year. And he came out to a live event that we do here for storytellingschool.com each year. And Traver was at I think you guys came out on the same plane, and he filmed us And in the book, there's a link to that short little clip.
No
So you can
kidding.
see us. Yeah, it is. It's so, and there's links to all the 10 episodes. So I'd encourage you to go check that out. But we do these live shows so that we can, take 3 or 4 minutes with the people who raise their hands and just answer questions. To Trevor's point, I remember, Trevor, you invited me to one of your initiations in Austin last year. I said, what do you need me to do? And he goes, just sit on the porch and be an elder. It was exactly what you said. Just sit on the porch and be there, be available for guys. And what's interesting is I self-identify as a Sherpa more than an elder. In the show, I'm an elder, but as a Sherpa, I've been on the road. I've been on this hike, and I've left some oxygen bottles up ahead for us because I know we're going to need them. And I've kind of been that way with my kids and clearly with my grandkids. And it's very satisfying to be in that role for a much larger group of people. So we appreciate this. So Zach, who do you have up first? Here we go. Hey, Dylan. Zach will spotlight you so we can see you up here and maybe tell us where you're calling in from.
Hey, Mark and Dewey. I'm calling from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
There you go.
Oh, hey, Dylan. Good morning.
Good morning. My question, initially, it's maybe more directed for you, Dewey, but I think that, Mark, you could probably have something for me as well. I'm a men's coach. I've been trained by Traver twice, and I've been doing transformational work with men in this space for several years. And I'm deeply interested in the machinations of men's minds and really the psychological underpinnings that cause their suffering and their realities. But I don't trust the current educational environment. And so this year I was actually going to go study to start being a psychologist, but I decided against it because of the cost. And many different factors. The costs just don't seem to be worth it. So my question is, how would you give me advice as somebody who wants to and is committed to addressing the suffering in men in a therapeutic and psychological way without pursuing a degree as a therapist?
Well, that's a pretty big question. Can I ask what other training have you done in addition to what you did with Traver?
Yeah, so I am certified as a breathwork facilitator. I did that with Leela and Remy Ruiz. Then I did the training with Traver, and then leadership training with David Boyd, with Men Uncivilized as well.
Okay.
And then I have extensive training in meditation and self-inquiry through Buddhist traditions and other teachers in the spiritual domain on understanding the fundamental nature of the self.
Okay.
And two, I would say a lot of my education comes from my own self practice,
Sure.
which to me is the most powerful thing. So.
Got it. Well, actually, there are 3 things that come to mind. One is, as a coach or as a therapist, we cannot go any further with somebody than we've gone ourselves. And so and what will happen is that when we begin working with somebody, if we haven't worked with the depth in ourselves that somebody needs to go, we will inadvertently stop that person. Or people, if we're working, say, with a couple or a group or a family. So that's one piece. other piece is the biggest thing that people miss, I believe, is in training, whether it's in coaching or in psychology school, therapy school, is that people miss learning about development, because we need to know that deeply. We also, because what happens is when people drop, they get younger. We need to know what that means. Two is that learning about polyvagal theory in a very, very deep way is important. And then the third piece is that I bring in as a whole piece around instinct and intuition. And how do we tap into that ourselves? And I would add actually a fourth piece is for people to learn what's called case conceptualization, and being able to look at what somebody is giving you, and in a very short period of time being able to go, boom, here's the big picture of what's going on. Those are the pieces that I think that people need to learn. The biggest piece in the developmental stuff is a whole learning how to work with attachment. There's a lot of stuff out there on trauma, and everyone wants to be trauma informed, which we need to be. But in all honesty, to drop in deeper, we need to know about attachment. So that's what I would say, whether or not you could go back to school or whether you do more coaching training, whichever you choose. I'm a little hesitant to say this because I don't promote myself that well.
Oh, I'll do it for you.
Yeah, I figured you would. So Kimberly and I run a 6-month course called the Instinct and Intuition for therapists and coaches.
Exactly.
And it's a super intense course. And I would invite you or anybody else into that. At this point, this year's round is full. We do 10 people at a time. So contact one of us about that if you have some interest. But the biggest in all of that, people can know all of those things. But if you have not done your own work,
Right.
then you will stop yourself. And you will,
I'm,
and you don't even know that you're doing it. And I'm not talking about you personally. I'm talking about you collectively. So
I'm reminded of a couple of things, Dewey. One is something I learned from a doctor, is the way they teach in medical school, which I didn't know. It's called SODOTU, which is see one, do one, teach one.
mm,
And
Yeah.
it's a fantastic way to learn, because I see Dewey do something, then I do that thing, and then I teach someone to do it. Super back to the simple things. I'm also reminded when you said I should go to psychology school. Sounds like you've done a lot of education. I started a software company that went on to win 5 Academy Awards, which the guys were talking about, in visual effects and visualization and 3D animation and all of that. And we were preparing to go public. This was in the early 90s, and we needed to hire a CEO who would work well with finance. Would stand up to the street, so to speak. And so we hired this guy. He's a good submarine captain, ex-IBM guy. And I'm in talking to him once, and he's trying to get to know me. And he says, "So where'd you go to college?" I said, "I didn't go to college." He goes, "Oh, you got to go to college." Really? He goes, "Oh, you won't amount to anything if you don't go to college." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Well, hold on a second. I hired you."
Yeah. So
Yeah. Thanks, Dylan. Good luck to you.
I'd like
Yes,
to
sir.
throw in one more
Please.
piece, and
Please
this is a
do.
place where a lot of times coaches that gets put to the side at times is is as you're working with people, get somebody to do supervision with you. Get somebody that has been around a while to do supervision with you. I'm weaning off of seeing clients, and I'm doing a much more supervision. And that's a big deal. That's a really big deal though. We need
Thanks,
to-
Dewey. Thanks, Dylan.
Yeah,
Next
thanks.
you very
up,
much.
Zach. I think it's David. Well, David, nice to meet you, sir. Where are you
Good
calling
morning,
in
David.
from? You're on
Oops.
mute, sir.
Yeah, you're on mute, my friend.
I'm getting a t-shirt. I'm going to sell t-shirts, Dewey,
There we
that
go.
just say you're on mute.
Oh my God, David.
Yes, sir. Hello, Dewey. Great to see you.
All right, I'm good to
You
good
guys
to
have a
see.
history.
Yes, I
Would
think
you like to speak to that, sir?
yes, happy to. So Dewey once upon a time suggested that I look into some men's work, and I believe that was the last time I saw him in a therapist as a therapist. I think 34 years ago. I had the pleasure and privilege of working with Dewey from about ages 14 through 21. Yeah, it was a wonderful journey, and it was actually due to a kind of a bit of a vision, honestly, while just sitting in the middle of my life now, thinking things like, man, is this as good as it gets? Um, and I just felt this great thanks and flash for people who have made it their life's work to help others, as you've all explained so uh, well at the beginning of this call. And I just felt very grateful to Dewey. So I looked him up, sent him an email. We had a meeting about a year ago, and he recommended Traver's work. And I've since looked into it and I'm becoming involved, signed up for the initiation in Salida coming up here, and just really wanted to be a part of this call as well. So yeah, thank you both very, very much.
It is fucking amazing to see you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Likewise, Dewey. Absolute pleasure. Yeah, it truly is. And it just goes to show I think the depth of love and caring that is available in the world, and it can come back time and time again and so many years later. So thank you, Dewey, and thank you everyone for being here. And my particular question is on behalf of a friend who is going through a separation right now, but I'm sure it benefits everyone and people leaving or changing all kinds of relationships. But the question is, how do you rebuild trust and respect with someone you're separating or divorcing from, but you still want to have a better relationship with that person as a co-parent and a friend, and someone you can leave that relationship with still feeling healthy and whole, rather than just being bitter and, I'm done with it, that kind of thing.
You want to jump on this one first, Mark?
We've both experienced a little bit of this a few times.
Just a few.
And involving kids, right? So both my kids have different moms, and there was just I did not know then what I know now about bitterness and that just the fuck it attitude and going to court and all of that. Now I would go listen to one. I think it was in our very early episodes, that building trust is one brick at a time, and you can't expect too much because it's really starting over, because you've killed the thing that brought you together, and you need to set an intention. You both have to want to rebuild that. It's been my experience, but this is just my experience, that I could never be friends again. I'm not friends. In fact, I almost have a zero contact with door number 3. And that's just better all the way around. But I think in the parenting part, having just an agreement that, we're doing this for the kids. I look at how my wife, here we go. This is how I answer it. My wife's folks separated when she was 4, and they made it all about her. And in sense of going forward, it was all about her, what was best for her. And they moved within a mile of one another. And that she was 2 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 2 days off. And when I met her and I met them, the parents would not talk to one another. That was like the worst thing that could ever happen. Parents talking to one another. And I got in and I said, this is not going to work for me. I need us all to talk together. And we did our first TEDx event, and I had all 4 of them work together. And through working together, they all got to respect one another again. It didn't mean we went out to dinner, but we could build respect through working together. I don't know that specifically answers the question, but I think if you create a space and say, this is what you want, is that what you want? And if it is, then you can make that happen. Dewey, now you're going to give a much more interesting answer. I'm positive.
I doubt that. When we end relationships, most of us don't allow enough time or enough space to grieve the ending of a relationship. And there's 2 parts of the grief that we need to allow ourselves to do. One is just the actual fact of the ending of the relationship, of that we're not living in the same house, that we have to go get our own place, or those kinds of things. We have to divide up money, all of that stuff. That's one of the biggest things that people try to do, but they don't do that very well. And I'm going to circle back around to this in a second. The other thing that's actually the bigger piece is that when we end a relationship, we need to grieve the loss of a dream of what that relationship, of what we dreamt that relationship would be. Every time that I have fell in love with a woman and gotten together and married, or however we connect, there's a dream, and some people have the dream of, we'll grow old together, or we'll build this together, or we'll do this together. And people grieve the end of a relationship, but they don't grieve the end of the dream. And most of the time that dream has ended before the relationship ends. And that's why, in part, why the relationship ends. So, but they don't allow themselves to grieve because there's bitterness because of the loss of that usually. The other piece that happens is, and I'll circle this in, attachment, original attachment from when we're born until in a healthy process is about somewhere between 18 and 27 months. That's how long it takes to form original attachment in a healthy way. When we lose somebody, it takes that same amount of time of grief to detach or to unattach. So part of what happens is that people go, yeah, we've been separated 3 months. I don't know why I'm not over this. And so that's why we all end up at times getting into rebound relationships and stuff like that. So we need to give ourselves time. And but in specifically responding to your question, before 2 people can be friends or workable acquaintances or those kinds of things, the biggest thing that needs to happen is for both people to be able to grieve the loss of the dream of what that relationship was what they were hoping that relationship would be. Does that help?
Yeah. Thank you both so much.
You bet.
David, nice to meet you, sir. It must be, I'm just thinking of your 14-year-old self and Dewey. And I can't just, I can only imagine how important that was. You look like you got a nice smile on your face. So you've turned out okay, dude.
Thank you. I appreciate
You
that,
turned out
brother.
great. And I'm, again, you're like breaking tears, sir.
Oh,
So fucking great to see you again.
Dewey, I need to, this,
Thank you,
this, Zach, we can get ready for the next one. This reminds me of seeing people that I've worked with in an early, so in work, for me, working with someone was literally working with them. With you, it was in a therapeutic situation. But I was last year on the road to the Oscars, the gentleman who was the visual effects supervisor on Avatar, The Way of Water, which went on to win the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. He was in town to receive a Vanguard Award at the Santa Barbara Film Festival. And we had dinner, and he's grown up to be such a wonderful man and father. And I was reminded I was his first boss when he got out of UCSB, when he was, 21 or 22 and wanted a career in computer graphics and came to work with us. And now, a week later, I saw him walk up on a stage and get an Academy Award. That was something pretty amazing. And we have with us Bob. Hey, Bob, how are you?
Morning, sir.
Bob's going to unmute himself here eventually. We'll edit all this out in post, Dewey. Let's switch over to Alec, and then Bob's going to work on getting his. There he goes.
It wasn't letting me. Thank you. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, sir.
I have a question for both of you. I've been doing a little bit of a deep dive on Boyd Vardy and reading some of his books. And he spent 40 days and 40 nights in a tree house during the pandemic on the preserve that his family owns. And I was listening to, and he does these great, like 11 to 15 minute, like dispatch vignettes as part of this while he's in the tree. And he said something the other day that really, really struck me. And he said, there's massive loss in success. And it just literally made me stop, because I think as men, those two things are on opposite ends of the spectrum. Like we're driven to succeed in life and work and love and all of that. But I don't know that we stop to mourn, grieve the loss that is part of success. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and how we navigate that as men.
Jump on that, Mark, or you want me to?
What comes to mind, Bob, is my wife and I produce a ton of different events, and we do TED events, and we coach, and we do a lot of that kind of stuff. And there's so much work ahead of it. I'm also a chef, and so there's so much work getting ready for some big event. And there's always this point, and we've noticed this at the very beginning when we started doing things together 20 years ago. We'd get in the car to leave, and it's just us. There's no hoopla. There's no nothing. It's done. We've gotten the applause and the cheers and all that. And we just look at each other and we say, that's it. Yeah, that's it. It's back to just us. And it's interesting because that is the loss of that success. I'd never thought about it that way. And it's just interesting that no matter, at least in our lives, no matter how successful we get and how much applause there is, there's always going to be that getting in the cab or getting in the Uber and leaving and just going back to the normal part of it. That's just what came to mind. Dewey?
Yeah, I think I would actually tie this into the previous question. I'd add two things. One is when we're successful, our dream's over. It's like if my dream is to create something and I get there, it's like, okay, I need to actually grieve the loss of the dream because I've fulfilled it. But at the same time, what's been driving me is moving toward that dream. The other thing and this goes back maybe to the first question I believe that Dylan spoke about, and I was talking about around some of the neurobiology stuff, is that there is more dopamine release in the process and in the building up and the try than there is at the getting of something. And the reason dopamine is important is because that's the chemical that gets released that causes us to feel good. It's sort of the feel good chemical / hormone. And so there's more release of that and more satisfaction in the process of getting to somewhere than there is to getting there. And so because there's a lot of times someone has success and then they go, okay, now what? What do I do now? And so again, if I reach something where I've reached a dream and I've made it, when I have done that, the dream's over. So I have to grieve the loss of that dream before I can move on. It's the same exact thing at the end, because when we're moving towards something, we're in relationship with that something. Even if it's me trying to work with my horse on a certain, if I'm trying to do forward side pass and then we get it perfect, and it's like, okay, now what? So that would be my perspective of that.
Do we in that process, because I'm so goal driven, and I'm also so about the journey, and if I don't have a destination, then the journey doesn't make sense. So I have to have both of them. And I love this idea of it seems that when I raise my hands, I trigger my AI camera to do funny things. So I apologize for that. See, it's just still doing that. That I pretty much reset goals fairly quickly. So as you were saying that we have this 18 to 24 month window, which you and I have talked about a lot, is that the same in this situation?
Around resetting goals, is that what you're talking
Around
about?
success, grieving the loss of the dream.
Yeah,
in the non-personal relationship space.
yeah, it's very similar. It's like, oh, okay, I did that. Because part of what we do is when we reach something, a lot of times we go, now what? But if we're so goal oriented, many times what happens is that we don't let other ideas incubate along the way if we get overly focused. So and I mean, actually, I love Boyd Varty, and I'm about probably halfway through that book that you're talking about. And part of what he did was he had a very focused process of 40 days in basically a treehouse, and which to me sounds sort of amazing and scary, but it, again, when and men tend to get very focused on something, and oftentimes we don't end up allowing ourselves to incubate something else while we're doing X. We're not allowing ourselves to incubate Y. So
Perfect. Thank you,
Awesome.
Bob.
Thank you both.
thank
Let's
you,
go
sir.
with Alec. Alex, sir, how are you?
Morning, sir.
Hear me?
We can now.
Barely.
Okay.
You might have to speak a little louder.
Okay. I don't really have I've never really had like a mentor or an elder before, and I'm wondering like what the difference is between the two.
Oh. Boy, simple,
Be- be-
succinct, and it's got me stuck. What do you think, sir?
Between a mentor and the difference between a mentor and an elder? Is that what you're asking?
Um, yes, and I guess which one I should look for because I've never had either. And yeah.
My experience is that there's not a lot of difference.
Mm.
One of the biggest differences would probably be how they're spelled. And I do though, and this actually brings in a piece that Mark and I were talking, and Mark and I talk about this a lot, is the difference between an elder and an older. And an older is people get old, but they haven't really put their lives together. They don't have, they're not living with that much to offer. They're still developmentally pretty young. So again, if I'm looking for someone who's a mentor, I'm actually looking for someone who's very grounded in what they're doing and have spent a fair amount of time doing whatever that is that I'm looking for mentorship around.
Okay.
So how old are you?
I turned 32 next month.
Happy birthday.
Yeah,
Thank
happy
you.
birthday almost. So if you're looking for mentorship, you could, very possibly find someone in their late 40s or early 50s where they have lived and they have actually done their own work in that process of living. One of the biggest things I look for is whether I'm looking for mentorship or eldership, is somebody who's gone through really, really fucking hard times and has come out okay. And I mean, and most people go through really hard times. Many people don't come out okay. Many people get stuck in that hard time process. That's one of the things that where Mark and I have connected, is both of us, in all honesty, have gone through hell at different times in our lives. I mean, total fucking hell. Not just, oh, this was hard, I'm glad it's done. But it's like, I don't even know if I want to fucking live anymore around this. And I'm not talking about being suicidal, but I'm talking about horrible things happening. Like I've held babies in my arms when they died. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about just babies, I'm talking about my babies. And it's like, can you find somebody that has gone through those kinds of things and come out okay, and where they're solid, and people can be 40 or 50 years old. People can even be younger and have gone through really tough things. What happens then is, if someone is younger and then they continue growing into eldership, whatever that early experience was, early experience or experiences were that they had, the depth of understanding and the depth of integration of those experiences deepens as we get older, and they mean something different. So for me, and Mark, I would love to hear what you have to say about this, is the depth of and the way that I hold meaning to many of the losses that I've had is very different now than even 5 years after those losses. So, as well as the successes I've had, how I hold my successes is I hold that differently now than I did, even during those successes. So
I will, I'll chime in here.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Mentoring feels very specific. I want to talk to someone who's been there, done that, like maybe raising money. To go find someone who successfully raised money and have them be a mentor. The mentor mentee relationship is so precious. It's free, right? If a mentor is going to charge you, they're not a mentor, they're a coach. It's different, or a consultant. A mentor wants you to be successful. There's someone in your life. They do not need to be older than you. I wrote a long piece on LinkedIn on
that's good.
reverse mentoring, where I ran a after school program for at-risk kids in my software company. And I looked at them as young mentors around how to work with young people. It was fantastic when I framed it that way. I think elder is older, and it's a broader range of things. If you were to stack up all the things the two of us have done and gotten through, and I think of crucibles, Dewey, right, where we're burning off. We've gone through this crucible. We've been burned by fire, and thank God that we're still here to talk about it. I don't wake up every morning with my chin stuck to the curb someplace or in jail. So it's knowing that you're looking for that, put an intention out there. The universe will guide you towards someone. It's been my experience. You will find someone. I think I know I'm a mentor for 4 people right now that I regularly talk to. I'm not a coach. I'm not a one guy has been 40 years, and he is a significant person in technology now. And I love the relationship that we have. And he still comes to me and, hey, this thing happened. I'm not sure. How did I do? And most of the time he trusts his instinct and he did pretty well. But I love having that relationship. I couldn't have a bunch of kids, but it kind of feels like I have a bunch of people that I love and I pay attention to. Hope that helps you, Alec. Let's move to Jen. Jen,
Thank you.
how are you? Thank you so much, Alec. Let us know how you do on your search.
Okay.
Jen, there you go. Hi, Jen.
Good
Hi,
morning,
Jen.
gentlemen. Hi, Dewey. So my question is, thankfully, Dewey has shared his method on contact, and it has been a blessing. And I've recently had to really practice it with many specific people in my life, but my father and my brother specifically. And because they aren't consciously aware of the concept of being in contact and having that type of interaction while in conversation, I have felt drained afterwards. Like I have to keep the contact for both people. And I'm wondering if you have advice on how to not feel so drained after that type of situation. It happens with coworkers as well. And I just would like help if you can. I'm sure you can.
Let me get my magic wand out.
Yeah, please. Jeremy has one if you need it. It's in his backpack.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you. And thank you for taking what we speak about and putting it to use. That's the whole idea here.
Yeah, it works. It's totally worked. And I'm extremely grateful it has worked. But I want to not feel so drained afterwards if possible.
Okay, so level 1 is contact. Level 2 is learning how to let energy come in and move through you. And many times what happens is that people will create an opening and allow somebody to step in and make contact, which I talk about fairly extensively. And so for those of you on the call who haven't heard about this, what I speak about is our job in life and around relationship is creating an opening and being available for contact when somebody comes in. And that's really, truly the beginning of all relationships if we allow ourselves to do that. The piece that happens then, especially in difficult situations where if the contact is reciprocal, then it's pretty easy. But when you're holding it for both people and sometimes maybe more than two people, we have to learn to allow whatever energy that's coming in to move through us into the ground. And that's a hard thing to learn. Like I can meet with people for 8 or 10 hours in a day, and I'm tired because I've spent that much time, but I'm not tired from the energy that has come toward me, because I let it come in and go through me to the ground. And that's because Earth can hold that energy. All the energy we have is from Earth, and our surrounding environment. So it's just a matter of you learning how to do that.
Do we, you remind me of, in our martial arts practice, how we learn this is exactly what we're doing with energy. So maybe you can help us understand it from from a martial perspective.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Part of what regardless of the martial art. So the martial art I've studied the most is Aikido. And I'm a super baby in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that I'm working on it. I work hard at it. I'm still a baby. But it's like having an inner, what I call an inner softness. But in what we're really doing in Aikido is letting energy come in, we blend with that energy, and then we redirect energy. But if that energy comes toward us, we actually can blend with that and move it through us. And that's the biggest piece, because a lot of times energy will come in and we go, okay, I'm going to build a wall. I'm going to be tough. I'm going to be strong. And it's like, that just sets you up. And super quickly, working with horses is a really easy, fun way to learn this piece. And it's super quick story. When I won't give the whole story, but horses will spook when you're riding them. When they spook, if you go, then you're screwed. You really set yourself up to have a horse buck you off. If a horse spooks and you go with the horse and let that horse move their energy, and you're blending, and then you just redirect, and then it's like, oh, well, here we are, and nobody's hurt, and your heart rate doesn't go up, and you're not going, oh my God, I'm glad I didn't come off my horse, all of those kind of things. So it's really, I don't know, maybe it'd be worth at some point me doing something online, teaching people how to do that, or setting something up, because it's actually fun. That's the other part of it. It's actually fun stuff. So
Ben, thank you so much. Next up, it looks like Miles is in the house here.
In the house.
Yeah, it looks like we've got people who agree, Dewey, that we should do something about ground. I'm thinking about lightning rods and how and the word grounded, and having, that energy redirected to the earth. There's probably some metaphor there that works as well.
Totally, 100%. Thank you, sir.
Morning, Miles.
Hey, Miles.
Morning. Am I audible?
We can hear you.
Brilliant. I'm a little discombobulated. I just got back from Connor Beaton's men's retreat, and we missed you, Dewey.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, and KP, Kevin Powers, he's here on the call too. He was there. I really wish you would have been there, because I did the contemplative psychotherapy program at Naropa. And I remember we had some hallway conversations back in the day. I was like, I wish you would have had this guy. But you sent your protege, Michael Gay, who was really good. And
Michael's fantastic.
So good. He's so humble. He's like, oh, and I know this guy named Trevor. He's a really good friend. You should check out his stuff. So that's why I'm here, Trevor.
Oh, great.
Because you guys know each other well. So the retreat was hugely transformational, and I know you guys do a version, and you started speaking already about the horses. What are the differences between sort of what you would have done at Connor's retreat versus what you guys would do with the horses at your retreat for men?
Oh, wow.
If
Well,
you don't have to give any secrets or anything, because I know it's
I don't have any secrets that I gotta hide.
Not on these calls.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Whoever talked about eldership and mentorship, it's like when people are walking around with secrets, go somewhere else. If you're looking for that. First of all, I missed that retreat, and I missed it because we had 55 inches of snow here.
yeah.
Which we still have about 25 inches of snow on the ground, and I couldn't get out of here. There's a lot of similarities between the two initiations. If you're asking about the differences between the two initiations, Connor and Traver have different styles. Both are amazing. And they also support each other incredibly well. So
Excellent.
It's almost like if you go have a meal, you can have two different meals and they're both incredible.
That's
how I would put that.
That makes sense.
The piece with horses is we've been able to bring horses into the work that we do here because we're in Colorado doing them, and I have access to a 120-acre ranch with 40 horses. So we bring those in. We've also done some stuff at other places where we've been able to set up where we're working with horses. The nice thing about working with horses is that horses want to know two things. They want to know if they're safe and where they belong. And so in working with horses energetically, is people learn stuff that they can take into other relationships. And then the other big piece I just throw in about with the horses is horses are prey animals in the wild. Many times when we have gone through really tough times, whether it's been abuse or loss or some sort of PTSD from war or first responders or those kinds of things, we end up feeling like we're prey. And when we end up feeling like we're prey, we lose our ability to have contact. So when Jen was up here talking about what she was doing around contact, we lose that ability because if we're prey, we oftentimes feel like we have to protect ourselves. That instead of connect. So the piece of coming in and working with horses and learning how to not be predators so horses don't have to be prey, and tapping into that relational process is a piece that we can have people experience and learn and teach in very short periods of time, where it's so much you can experience it in 2 or 3 hours instead of taking all kinds of time trying to learn it some other way.
Yeah.
And Kimberly and I do couples intensives, and one of the people in the couples intensive said, it's one thing to talk about what you do with horses, and this person I've spoken about, it's another thing to come and do it. And so it's an experiential thing of learning how to do that. And people get to learn through that relational process. That
Be one, do one, teach one. Miles, thank you so much. Hope that answered the question for you. Next up is Clark. Hey, Clark, how you doing? Seen you've been on one of our lives in the past.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know you.
Yeah,
Good morning.
it's been a few years, but it's so good to see you again. Or maybe it's been a month. I don't know. It's hard to tell. So I've got a question about your attachment system, Dewey, but I'd love to hear from both of you. Um, the piece around the world, I'm okay, the world is okay as we heal the impasses and start to like mature. Um, I've always struggled to reconcile like my experience with that piece. It seems for me that the more I heal and the more that I grow up, um, the crazier the world seems to be. And I would just love to hear you speak to that. Like living here in Boston, like I find a very wide range of behaviors from people, and kind of going back to what you're saying about the being self-protective, I still feel very self-protective, even though I see myself becoming more in my adult consciousness. So I would really like to just hear what you had to say about that.
I'm trying to remember who said this. It might have been Krista Murte. But it goes something like this, and my apologies for not being able to reference this. The us growing and us learning, the purpose of our growth and our learning is not to become more able to deal with dysfunction. That's not what we're trying to do. There's a lot of people out there who want to teach coping and want to teach, how do you deal with this and how do you deal with that? Part of what happens is the more healthy we get, the more grounded we get, the more functional we get, the more we see the dysfunction that's around us. That's what happens. It's sort of like, a fish isn't aware of the water they swim in, but when we start getting healthier, we start stepping out of that water that we've been swimming in, and then find ourselves going, wow, what this is happening over here is crazy. What's happening over here is crazy. And it doesn't mean we can necessarily change those things. It just means that we will see more dysfunction because we're not in the middle of it anymore. We're not in the middle of it as much. So I don't know. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and that kind of I think helped me get more in touch with my real question, which is how do I, like, as I become more aware of the dysfunction in others, I find myself really lonely. Almost all of my friends are here in the nation or connected to this kind of work in some way, shape, or form, and none of them are here in my actual environment. If I want to hang out with somebody, I have to call them. I can't go get coffee with them. And the fact that like most people seem pretty dysfunctional to me is a big part of that. I don't want to talk about the things I talk about. I don't want to do the things I want to do. And I do feel very self-protective. And so I think the core of it is like, how do I find more people where I'm at, given that I do perceive people like I do see a world that I can't really say I think is okay. Thanks, Trevor.
What did Traver say?
He says I'm uncivilized.
That actually, it's true.
Yep.
It's true. And I actually get what you're talking about, Clark. And I also know that you moved to Boston pretty recently and that you're in the middle of a super heavy duty program. And so a lot of your energy and time goes there. I really do get that. the biggest thing and this is going to sound whatever it sounds like, is the biggest thing that I found is that if I'm really looking for friends, is that when I come across somebody that is, that it's like, oh, this person, there's some potential, but then I see something or I learn something where it's like, oh, we're just not really going to connect.
Yeah.
I don't put a lot of time and energy into trying to change anybody.
Mhm.
And I don't put a lot of time and energy into trying to make something dysfunctional functional on a friendship basis. That's actually part of what happened with Mark and me. It was like, here's this man that it's like, I don't have to fucking change anything.
Mhm.
And Mark never tried to change anything with me. And as you've all been able to see, we do come from different places, but we come from functional places. And my perspective is that probably 90% of the people in the world have attachment issues.
Mm.
Just because we do.
Mhm.
That's what happens in our society. And so part of this is, one, it's a matter of time, and two, it's a matter of, oh, I thought there was potential here, and maybe there's not. But the biggest piece of when you do that is do that without judgment. It's not like maybe there's not, and this person's a piece of shit. If you do that, then that affects you. If you do that and you go, yeah, this just isn't a fit right now.
Mhm.
Then
Dewey, I'm reminded of something that I learned through meditating years in the very, very beginning of that, about 10 years ago, was this concept called observing with interest. You're familiar with that?
yes,
And
absolutely.
the idea, Clark, is the visualization that was given to me, and it totally works, was that you are sitting on there's the freeway of life going in front of you, and it's just a freeway, and you're just sitting there, and there's a nice car, there's an ugly car, there's a fast car, there's a slow car. You're just observing with interest. Oh, that's interesting. And then they're gone. That's interesting. And it's what I was taught. It's called noting, just noting that. And I'm not judging. To Dewey's point, I'm not judging. It's just, oh, that person's an asshole. Yep. Okay. Well, stay away.
Well,
Or
that
that
might be a
person's
judgment, Mark.
Oh yeah. Okay. I observed them being yeah. Okay. Well, you see, there you go. But you might observe, oh, there's something interesting. Let's see if there's an opening. Can I create an opening for that? I'm more thinking. So that's how I go through life now. But in terms of not having a friend, Dewey and I have talked about this a lot. Most men don't have really close relationships with other men. That's a sweeping generalization. I understand that, but I know that's true in my case. And when I met Dewey, I saw that was a big hole. That was I didn't have that. And our friendship nurtured and matured. And we didn't meet each other for quite a long time. Again, when you came out, yet we had, it was like we'd known each other all of our lives. And so don't the fact that you have friends in the nation, hey, that's fantastic. That is great. Don't discount that just because you can't hug them. And maybe what you do is you schedule a meetup. You go say, hey, let's go meet someplace. Let's, I think there's also an opportunity. I saw the Uncivilized Boston to maybe find some other people or people that live close to you or that you could go meet. There's something, I love a full body hug. And I linger on those hugs, as Dewey knows. I don't, those are really, really valuable, and you don't need a lot of them. Clark, thank you so much. Let's go to John. And I think if you're okay, Dewey, we can go a little bit longer.
I'm fine going longer if people want to hang.
Yeah, let's have Amit be the last one there. Amit, thanks. And then we've got Bob on deck and Josh. Okay, thanks. Hey, John, nice to meet you. Where are you calling in from, sir?
Hey chaps, I'm in the southwest of the UK, so yeah, joining you from quite a distance.
Great.
Love it.
Thanks to both of you. And Dewey, you talked about how do you get unstuck from a hard time process, and you shared something really personal there. I'm sorry you went through that. But my question is, following on from a Connor Beaton course on finding direction in a chaotic world, there's a couple of things that are floating around in my head. The first one is, how do I get unstuck from that hard time process? Alongside that, so this is like subpart to that first question, I never had grief modeled for me when I was a kid, not by my parents. And the thing that came up in the Connor Beaton course is you probably need to grieve some of the hard shit that you've been through. And so whilst you're talking about that anything up to 27 months it takes to grieve, I've no idea what to fill that with. And so it feels like I'm very much having it done too, rather than actively trying to work through it. And my default stance is always to be a little more on the front foot. And so I'd like to be more active with that anyway. And then beyond that, so this is I think the second question. Once I've gone through all of that, what does purpose look like afterwards? You know, you talked about some of the grieving post a relationship is the loss of the dream. But for me, I've also been exploring, what does healthy masculinity look like now? And for me, it looks like an act of service, right? And when I was in a relationship, I could serve that relationship. When you know, if we were lucky enough to have kids within that marriage, we didn't, then being a dad would be an act of service. And I work in IT sales, which it's a little grubby. It feels like the purpose is to make the shareholders and the sales guys a little bit better off, and that's just not enough. And so I need to grieve, and I value your perspectives on how to do that. And secondly, I need to know, how do I chart a course after all of this? Because I want to serve, but serving myself feels all wrong. It feels like there should be a community, there should be something closer to me that I would rather work on that feels more valuable. And actually I'll learn and heal through that process anyway. So
Hey,
all of that's a little messed up.
Dewey, why don't you take the part on grief? Because you worked deeply with me on that. And that was, I can't thank you enough. I could never thank you enough for that. And then let me take the purpose bit, because I think I've got an answer on that.
Yeah, okay, perfectly. Boy, Bart, you we just did a men's certification weekend meeting like 3 weeks ago. A 3-day course on helping therapists and coaches learn how to work with men. One of the short videos that we showed, which Traver turned me on to, was a series of probably 20-ish men being asked, who would you call if you need to call somebody? And it was just 8 to 10 to 15-second vignettes of men going, I don't have anybody to call. I don't have anybody, you know, who would I call? Nobody cares. And men would even go, what? I'm supposed to call somebody? Those kinds of things. And what Mark just spoke about was I'm trying to remember, 2 summers ago.
Yeah.
Kimberly and I were actually out camping, and we were close to a town, Buena Vista. So my phone worked, and Mark called and had a major loss in his life. And what happened was Mark actually had somebody to call that would fucking care about him enough to interrupt everything that was going on, which is what we did. And Kimberly gave me 1,000% support on this, just to give kudos to her, is that this happened, and I don't know, I don't remember how long we talked that first call, maybe 2 hours. And then subsequently every day for, I don't know, I don't remember how long, a month and a half, something like that. And then it started, the time limits started, or the time spaces got bigger, but every day I would make contact with Mark. And Mark has done that same kind of thing for me. So this is very reciprocal. And the biggest piece is around grief is, who do you have to call?
That's a short list.
Yeah. Well, actually, this man that was on here right before you, named Clark, put him on the list. He's a good man.
Roger
And it's like, that's the first piece of our grieving process, is having somebody, that we can call. Yeah, take a breath and just stay with this. You're all good. Yeah. You're good. And yeah, we got you here. We got your back, John.
Thanks.
And the piece of being seen, having somebody to call, having somebody to get what you're going through, is the first part.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, I mean, I'm a therapist, and I'm pretty damn good at what I do, and I've been doing this for 50 plus years. But when Mark called me, I was not a therapist. I was nothing more. I won't say it that way. I am. And at that moment, it was like, okay, I am Mark's friend. I am Mark's friend that he needs to have somebody to talk to.
See, that's the thing, isn't it? We're back to the act of service, whether you knew it or not. The instant the phone rang, it's like somebody put a harness on a Clydesdale. You've got something to lean into now, right? You lean into that friendship, you give something back to him, and that responsibility makes you a better man. It like harnesses what's in you.
Yeah, and exactly. And it's like, and that's what I'm talking about around going through a tough time. Mark and I went through that together. We were both sobbing on the phone.
Yeah.
It wasn't me. There was nothing clinical about what I did. It was like, oh my God, here's my dearest friend in the world calling me about a horrible situation. And everything else stopped. And even to the point, we talked about it, did I need to leave Colorado and fly to Santa Barbara?
Yeah.
And so it's that the biggest piece of getting unstuck is having somebody to call. And the biggest piece of going, I need to grieve this, is telling somebody that you need to grieve this. Like, I have had this loss.
Asking for help's like the first vulnerability, right? That's a big obstacle to get over.
Yeah, and actually, many of you probably know who Brene Brown is. One of Brene's things is a vulnerability takes more courage than anything else. And I wish I would have been smart enough to say that, but I wasn't. I'm not. But it's like that, bringing that level of vulnerability in and having somebody to grab hold of, somebody to hear you, because as men, we want to be seen, heard, gotten, and protected. And we don't get that.
No.
We don't get that.
Societally, we're taught not to share it, not to ask for it. And societally, we're taught not necessarily to give it either, right?
Yeah. It's like you're right. We're taught
Can you what?
not to ask for it and not to give it.
Sure.
John, one of the things I've learned is that, and I'm quoting myself now, Dewey,
Yeah, go for it.
is vulnerability is contagious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen.
And I've seen that so many times that I was exposed to this 28 years ago, my first TED conference, when I learned the TED commandments, which were to tell a story you've never told before, don't try to sell us anything, and be vulnerable. And my example of the vulnerability was a surgeon who admitted that he was bipolar and would have episodes during surgery, but he had never told anybody that until that moment. And he was sobbing, and we were sobbing as a result. And being vulnerable, it does take courage, but it also takes practice.
Yeah, I mean, the first time you try it, it's ugly as fuck, right? It just tumbles out any old which way, and it's mixed up with anger, and it's mixed up with grief and sorrow and energy and all manner of stuff. So I guess I get that. I'm still reeling from the words of fuck. Give me a second.
You're good. Take your time.
I think you said the 10 Commandments. The first one was tell a story that's never been told. Oh, I don't think I've told any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I'll be 50 this year.
Exactly.
Oh,
my wife and I produce an event we call Hidden Stories. And we come into a community and we find the 9 people who can tell a story, their story that's never been told before. And we had a man who had a deeply personal story. 6 people in the world knew this story, and Kimberly and I were 2 of them. He'd never told his family. And he told this story, and it was so healing for him. And keeping that stuff bottled up isn't any good. So think about it. I like, Clark, if you could share your contact information with John in the chat, that would be great, because you guys are, you're super close because you're on one edge of this continent. He's on, did you say the western edge of the UK, John?
yeah, but the UK is small enough. We're all in the same time zone. We don't need to worry about any of that stuff. So
fantastic. John, thank you so much. Good luck to you, buddy.
Can I say one other thing before we go on? Yeah, John, just be aware of where you spoke at the beginning of your question here of, I'm stuck, I don't know how to move forward. That as soon as you said that, and as soon as somebody heard you say that, someone started seeing, it started breaking it loose.
Yeah.
And
I didn't spot that at the time, but I feel that now.
Yeah. And a last piece I'll leave you and the rest of the people here. And I don't know your story, but well, my guess is that you were injured in a relationship or relationships. The only way to heal that is in relationship. And what we do as men is we get hurt in relationship, then we go fucking isolate. And that keeps us stuck.
Doesn't it just?
Yeah. Got your back, sir.
So listen, I've had enough of your time. We'll come back to purpose on the next one, huh? But listen, thank you both so much. And for all you guys in the chat with all of those numbers, I think I can save the chat. It'll take me a couple of days, but I'll get around to reaching out to all of you folks, guys and girls alike. Thanks so much.
All right,
I think we'll do John, I've got a lot to say about purpose, probably a whole show's worth. So Dewey next week.
Yeah, maybe we need to do that. Yeah,
I think we'll do that. Let's, hey, Bob, how are you?
Good. Thanks for being here. Bob from Chicago. I'm at this chapter in my life where like I'm holding a lot. I'm holding some really amazing, incredible things. and then also holding some really scary, painful things. I have a business that's going really well. I'm in the best shape and strongest I've been in my adulthood. Things are going really well in one area. In this other area, my wife was diagnosed with cancer last year, really aggressive, really scary. And we have a 3-year-old son, which very much he's leading us through this, but it seems so unfair that he has to have this as part of his journey. I lost my father at a very young age, and it seems like there's a potential for this like reoccurrence of my experience with him. And I got this hit, like the thing you just said, Dewey, around like if you're hurt in relationship, you heal. You have to heal in relationship. I'm just like, does my inner child wound from losing my father get to heal by supporting my son and losing his mother? And I'm like, not fucking here for that. Like I do not want to call that in, but so like I've got a ton of support. I'm so grateful for it. I've got therapists, I've got a coach, I've got men's groups. I've got an amazing wife who, even going through what she's going through, can still hold space for me. And at times just still doesn't feel enough. So it's like, what the fuck do I do with this? Like, who am I supposed to be with this? And I'm just like, it's just to like feel it, be with it day at a time. Like I've got all this access to like support and wisdom and feeling and embodiment, and it just still doesn't feel enough. And there's times where I feel like I'm going crazy, and there's times where I act out in ways that I'm not committed to acting or being. And and then like on top of it, I'm like leading this incredible fucking movement and making a huge impact and difference in the world. And I bring that to that. I let the people I get to work with and serve like see this and see me. And it's like all of that just still doesn't feel enough. So, I think, fuck, I don't know what the question is, but it's like, what do I do? Who do I be?
Well, you are being who you're supposed to be. You're actually supposed to feel crazy right now. With what you're going through, you're actually supposed to feel like, I'm fucked up, I don't know what to do. And you will run into those places where you go, I don't even know if it's worth it. And I'm so overwhelmed, I don't know what to do. And, and whatever, and I'm not asking you to share this piece because, you said I behave in ways that don't even fit. And it's like, what I would say is enjoy it. And what I mean by that is it's like your system and your body is doing what it's supposed to do. And, when you get to those places, asking for help is highly appropriate. The one thing, and I have more to say, but I'm aware of timing here, is the biggest thing to walk away from this with is that what you're going through is how you're designed. It's how we're designed. And it does feel crazy as hell. And I guess my question is do you and your wife, do you take a period of your day, and I'm like talking 20 minutes, and just find a place to hold each other, like just laying in bed or laying on the couch and holding each other for 20 minutes and making that a ritual and breathing with each other? And I'm not talking about being sexual. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm talking about two people who love each other dearly making that level of contact. Are you guys doing that?
The answer is sometimes. You know, I think I noticed too, a lot of my fear pushes her away. And hers too.
Sure.
And you know, it's, if I'm not working, then we got, you know, our son around, and or she's at an appointment, and it's just
Sure.
like we make the time for what we value, and I think we've been so scared to carve that time out. But I hear you, man.
Well, that time will be a really positive thing for both of you. I know.
Yeah, I think that just jumped to the top of your to-do list, Bob.
Yeah, that will be a very, very helpful thing to your son too. Because right now, and this is the way to frame it, is right now, if you're holding each other for 20 minutes, right now we're okay. Right now we're okay. Right now we're okay. And that, with all that you've spoken about, and I know that there's more, but with all that you've spoken about, is the piece that I would add would be that. And the rest of the stuff, it sounds like you're doing an amazing job at.
Yeah.
And the other piece is, I say, you're supposed to be fucking feeling crazy sometimes. Because that's what that level of love and grief does. If you weren't feeling crazy, I'd be worried about you.
Yeah. Bob, thank you for sharing all of that with us, and we'll hold you in our thoughts, and her as well.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Josh. Thanks for hanging in there, everybody. It's been
thank you, everybody.
Dewey, we should do this more often. I love having 100 people here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Hi, Josh.
Yeah, hey man.
Where are you calling in from, Josh?
I'm calling in from Asheville, North Carolina.
There you go.
And grateful to be here, and definitely hearing parts of myself from Dylan to John to Bob. So thank you guys for your shares. And I want to rewind and just offer a piece into the conversation that we touched on before, of this concept of that what we need to get to lies underneath the vulnerability. And just to share a piece in hopes that it's of service. The first time I heard it was that as men, as humans, but as men, our power lies underneath our vulnerability. And then over time, and through working on myself, and just you know, having just noticed moments and just being present, that expanded to our power and our possibility lie underneath our vulnerability. So I just want to pass on that piece in hopes that it might be of service to others. Dewey, I had the pleasure, and Dave, I had the pleasure of ending up after a Zoom call on the phone with the two of you. And Dewey, you were asking me some questions and just kind of sounding board with me around abandonment and neglect as abuse, and that those are so deeply challenging to resolve. And you mentioned that you asked me why is that so challenging to resolve in terms of attachment, and to get to the bottom of that. and I said ambiguity. My experience was that the ambiguity of abandonment, it's not like being struck or being, you just don't know. There's an absence. And I'm talking about the fundamental issue that I'm grappling with now in my own life. And what seems to be the core kernel of what's coming up for me is really around attachment and around the absence of father.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing it. And so a lot of things that brothers on this call have said are showing up, and I'm seeing things through this filter of the next stage in my own healing. And a couple things that have come up around that, like, you know, tell a story that's never been told and reaching underneath the vulnerability. This simple question, I mean, where it's showing up also, and another piece, bear with me a second, trying to articulate this, is that in my practice, like I work as a mentor, which is a new evolution for me. I was a teacher for many years. I come from a long line of teachers, and I've been working as a hypnotist for the last 15 plus years. And I've done a lot of work with trauma, a lot of regression to cause, a lot of what we call etheric plane communication, meaning having a conversation with someone who is either living or dead, but not really in the room. In addition to doing a lot of parts therapy, I've been engaged in parts therapy myself, submodalities, subpersonalities. And, you know, I am very impactful and powerful in my ability to listen a wound and to help a person bring their rich internal resources to that painful place inside them and to heal those wounds. Some people call that like reparenting. And I recognizing I'm seeing all of these things that I've been doing, including I can only go as deep as I've gone myself. Right. And it's showing up in this very specific area around attachment and around, Dewey, you said it to me that when you kind of you zeroed it when you said about father, and father were like, yeah, like, where the fuck are you? Like, where the fuck are you? Where the fuck were you? Right. That really zeroed it for me. And I've been processing ever since. And I guess the simplicity, I'd love to hear anything you'd like to share on that. You said, Josh, you know, we're going to be doing some work on this. And if you want to bring that to initiation, that would be a good place to do that. I'm coming to initiation. Thank you for calling that out. Thank you for the invitation. And my simplest, like, zero down condensed question is, you know, Dewey, is there a place where I should be looking for expanded versions of the conversation that you shared with me, where your work is available, either podcast or YouTube or online or reading material? Where would you direct me, sir? Thank you.
You bet. I want to circle back. I want to talk about vulnerability. I'm just throwing this out for you to think about. You mentioned that our work and our service is underneath the vulnerability. My perspective is our work is the vulnerability. We're not trying to get under it. We're trying to become vulnerable and be solid in our own vulnerability. The other piece is that there is some stuff online around my attachment stuff. I actually haven't published that purposely yet, because I just had a chapter accepted, and it's going to be published in the American Psychological Association Manual of Humanistic Therapies. But that's not published yet. That's going to come out in about 6 or 7 months. When you come to the initiation, and we typically talk about attachment on a much deeper level. So bring your questions there. And start looking at my stuff. Go to my website. I do a lot of teaching about attachment. And I'd also invite you to the next, in October, we're doing another 3-day men's certification working with men. On working with men, I'd invite you to that because we will do a deep dive into that.
Josh, thank you so much. Those are all, and all the team has been posting all of these links. You can go to theeldercouncil.com and click on either of our faces and get to our own sites and have all the information there. And then,
Thank you,
you know,
Mark.
we have 100 episodes in our back catalog. There's a lot there. And there's a book right there. It's free for you guys on the site. So there may be some stuff there. We get into a lot of these things. Josh, thank you. Ahmet, you're going to bring us home, buddy. Come on, welcome to the show.
Thank you,
Where are you
Josh.
from?
Hi, I'm from
Thank you,
Istanbul,
Gil.
Turkey. And
Istanbul.
Guys,
Are you in
from
Turkey right
welcome.
now?
Yeah, I'm in Turkey right now. Yeah,
Welcome.
it's evening time. It's almost 8 p.m. right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
I will be brief, being the last one, but I will yet bring up two issues, and somehow I have a feeling that they are linked together. The first one is about eating. Like maybe it's an attachment issue, but I have an urge to eat. I want to eat incessantly. I want to eat and drink. While even during this call, I have this tea with me, but it's a big major issue from my childhood on. And it's an addiction. And the second thing is something I realized recently as I am getting elderly, also I'm in my 50s. You know, I'm quite well educated. I was not under wrong influence. I was in decent neighborhoods in my hometown. However, when I look back, I realize that I made many wrong decisions. Sometimes it's about choosing which job. Sometimes it's even about which car to rent or which food to order, and I still cannot understand that. Like, what is wrong with me? It's not that I'm not smart enough to make good decisions, and I do consult people and people come to me, I give trainings and so on. But somehow when it comes to my life, I regret actually. It makes me sad actually to having made so many wrong decisions. And I don't know why. And it's the first time I'm bringing that up in somebody else's presence. And I thought you were the ones that I could share that with me. And the first time I think the food addiction and this making wrong decisions are also linked to each other. Please forgive me if it's too much to ask.
No, that's not too much to ask. You want to jump on that, Mark? And then I will.
The thing that comes to mind is having a strong personal ethos. And to me, that comes from my martial training. There were 5 things. We've talked about this extensively on the show, but this might be helpful for you. The ethos is courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit. And every one of those is so important. And when I come to a choice, having that ethos as a way to guide me, am I, a choice to be an asshole to someone? That's not being courteous. A choice to, you always have a choice where your integrity is challenged. And so you can, I want to be in integrity. I want to persevere, right? I'm going to persevere. I'm also going to exercise self-control. That's where the eating comes in. So that having a strong personal ethos. But the 5th one is the one I love the most: indomitable spirit. So I cannot be dominated. Period. Can't be dominated. So a bad choice does not dominate me. That was just a bad choice. That's what I have doing. I think sometimes we forget how powerful values are, personal values are, and having a code, a creed, I call it an ethos that helps you make decisions. As I taught my son when he was 14, and he was in trouble because he didn't take out the trash. And I said, well, that was just a choice. You chose to not remember to take out the trash. It's like, what? It is all about choices. But I think having a compass, if you will, helps you make those choices. And you can see if you're in integrity with those choices and things you want. Dewey?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I love when you bring in those pieces. What I would say, and again, what I'm thinking here is we probably need to put together a whole online class on attachment.
Noted.
To help people with this. And you're right that the eating stuff, that level that you're describing is attachment / addiction. So that is a piece that at some point would be worth diving into. The other piece is the issue that if you and I were working together individually and you said what you just said, what I would say is, I don't know that the issue is making a wrong choice. The issue is that you judge yourself in the choices you make instead of going, oh, okay, well, this car didn't work out. I'll get another car next time. It's that there's a level of judgment that's embedded in what you do. And so the work isn't to try to always make better choices. The work is, because we all try and do that. The work is can you make a mistake? Can you blow it, for instance, and do that without judging yourself? Because, and that's also an early developmental thing. At some point in our lives, and I'll just end with this. At some point in our lives, we have to learn to separate personhood, like who we are as a being in the world, from behavior. So the behavior is making a choice, whether it's good or bad. The personhood is, I mean, you're a good man, whether you get the right car at the rental place or not. It has nothing to do with who you are as a human being on the face of the earth. But we get told that it has something to do with that. Then we believe that.
Let that one sink in, Amit. You will have this this whole show posted on the eldercouncil.com probably by the end of the weekend. I want to thank everybody who showed up and stayed with us. They're all tough conversations. And I know that even though we spotlit certain people, I know there were pieces of all of us in all of the questions. And that's what I love about these kinds of calls. Thank you all for being honest and open. And I think of my Star Wars metaphor of, lowering your shields for a couple of hours. It feels very, very safe here to be able to do that, seek out safe spaces. When you are with other people, let them know you have their back and that you want to create a safe space with them, that you're a safe person to be around. That's really, really important. And that's the way I choose to live. And that's just how I do it. Dewey, I love you so much. You are my best friend. I hope people felt that friendship. I would encourage you, if you're new, I know we invited a lot of people into the house that are new. We have a back catalog. We have a book. It's at theeldercouncil.com. It's all free. We don't charge for any of this. If you want to learn more about our individual work, just click on our pictures on the Elder Council. And we would love to hear from you. There's a contact page. So if there's things you would like to hear us talk about, you can suggest a topic to us. And this is a community we're building now. Traver, again, thank you so much for being the mothership for us for 100 episodes. And now we're going to jettison the pod out into the universe. I'm so thankful that we had people from all over the world on the call. Please tell one person this week about what this call meant to you. That will help. We We're going to do a show next week on purpose, and this show has become a big part of my purpose. Do any closing words, sir?
Again, I'm incredibly grateful for our friendship and hold you in the absolute highest esteem possible, period, end of story. And Traver, thank you for supporting this and all that we bring. And thank you, everybody who's been on the call, whether you got to speak or not. I'm incredibly grateful for each person who took your time on a very valuable Saturday morning. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Gentlemen,
Bye-bye. Oh, yes, sir.
before you guys hop off, please let us thank you.
Mm.
I think you guys get, and I hope everybody on the call felt that there are situations, there's topics, there's complexities that we can't handle alone. And that not just the genius of you coming together, but the combined heart of you coming together is indescribable. So thank you again from all of our hearts for all of your generosity, your wisdom, and your love. We love you to death. Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Take care.